Good evening. I'm Kim Ryer. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana, the state's oldest and largest coastal advocacy group. On behalf of CRCL, the Urban Conservancy, the Greater New Orleans Foundation, and all our partners, I'd like to thank you for being here tonight and welcome you to our debate. Make no mistake, New Orleans is a city of water. Our prosperity will rise or fall based on how we cope with the challenges and opportunities presented by this reality. We're delighted to be here tonight with the two runoff candidates for mayor, to be here at NOCCA in this beautiful facility, and to have the chance to discuss with the candidates and with you a myriad of issues related to water in all its forms. Stormwater that we're struggling with all too frequently, groundwater that is disappearing, causing our city to sink, and our coastal waters which are rising, changing our landscape. As recent storms have highlighted for us, issues of stormwater management and drainage are of great importance to New Orleans voters. In our city, water management is about safety and security and prosperity. So it's fitting and important that tonight the candidates are here in advance of the November 18th election to focus on water issues, because our next mayor will need to focus on water issues on a daily basis. It will be that important. And finally, I'd like to add before we get started that as a mother of 3 young girls, I'm inspired by the fact that our next mayor will, for the first time, be a woman. And I'd like to express my gratitude to both these candidates for the wonderful leadership they're modeling to young women across our state and across the region. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Andy Copeland, the President and CEO of the Greater New Orleans Foundation, our presenting sponsor this evening.
Thank you, Kim, and good evening. The Greater New Orleans Foundation is working with a coalition of grassroots organizations to drive leadership in the area of water. And while the summer's flooding was a tragic reminder of the shortcomings of our drainage system, the underlying problems have been well documented and have developed over generations. And we know now that our traditional strategies of building bigger pipes and stronger pumps are outdated and insufficient. We need green infrastructure as well, and we need to implement the city's urban water plan. So we hope that our next mayor will work on these environmental issues while noting that they also have significant social and economic implications for our residents of our city. 3 policy areas we think are important are that the comprehensive zoning ordinance be updated to ensure that all new developments, redevelopments, and expansions, regardless of size, implement best practices for stormwater management. We also want to see power built within our neighborhoods and have the mayor be a champion for meaningful community participation in all of these efforts. And on the economic opportunity end, we have the chance, with the money already in hand for the Department of Public Works and the Sewer and Water Board, about $3 billion over the next decade to create thousands of jobs. And we think it's vitally important that we train our disconnected residents for these new jobs so that the people of New Orleans can truly be the ones rebuilding the infrastructure of our city. Additionally, we are a coastal city, as Kim said, and coastal land loss is a critical issue that also threatens our community. So we want to make sure that our leader of the city of New Orleans works closely with state and regional officials to make sure that our coastal land loss crisis is addressed aggressively, because New Orleans is increasingly threatened by coastal land loss. And lastly, I want to wish the best of luck and congratulate, as Kim did, our 2 terrific candidates who are seeking your support to lead our city forward in a way that causes us to effectively live with water and build a sustainable, resilient, and strong New Orleans for the future. Thank you very much.
Now I'd like to introduce Jimmy Frederick, CRCL's Communications Director and our moderator this evening.
Thank you, Kim. I also want to welcome everyone to this very important mayoral runoff debate on flood risk and adapting to coastal and environmental change. The events of the last few months have pushed these issues to the forefront of this election. With few exceptions, these are the most pressing challenges that our next mayor will face when she takes office. Before I introduce our candidates, I want to remind our audience that we want you to be a part of tonight's debate. We'll be accepting questions via text message until 8 p.m. this evening. And we're asking that if you would keep them brief, we would ask that you keep them on topic as well. And also, please include your name. The number to text those questions in is on the back of your program, so please get those in as soon as you can. This is an historic election for New Orleans, and we have some historic candidates. Everybody knows who they are, so we're going to dispense with all the biographies. So if you'll help me, please help me welcome our two candidates tonight, Councilwoman LaToya Cantrell and Judge Desiree Charbonnet. Welcome, ladies, to the stage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now some ground rules for tonight's debate, and it truly is a debate, so we will let you know how this is going to go. First and foremost, of course, you'll have opening statements of 1 minute apiece. Then our moderated questions, you will have 1 minute to answer those questions. Then we will have a 45-second rebuttal for each of you, and then I may ask a follow-up question to one or both.
Okay.
Once we get to the audience questions, again, it'll be 1 minute to answer the questions. Our rebuttal time will be a little bit shorter to 30 seconds. We want to get as many of those audience questions in as we can, so please text those in. Ladies, I want to remind one last thing, and that is that we have a lot to cover tonight. So please be mindful of your time. We have a timer right here. When you see it go to the big red zeros, I will allow you to finish your thought, but I will interrupt if necessary.
Okay.
By a coin flip earlier today, we decided our order, and we will start off with our opening statements with Councilwoman Cantrell.
Okay.
Councilwoman.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As stated, I am LaToya Cantrell. The issue of flood mitigation, stormwater management has been really at the forefront of work that I've done both at the community level as well being on the New Orleans City Council. I was very proud to be one of the Women of the Storm where we really pushed and lobbied Congress for offshore royalties so that we can begin to protect our coastlines, of course, losing about a football field a day. In addition to that, implemented a plan from the Broadmoor community, again focusing on flood mitigation practices, raised over over $500,000 up to $1 million to ensure that the public school that was rebuilding the community also existed with a cistern, bioswales, you name it, homes, a LEED certified gold, also platinum. You know what? This has been at the forefront of what I've been working on, and I'm so very delighted to be here.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Judge?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Desiree Charbonnet. I am running for mayor. I've been serving this community for 20 years now as an elected official. Born and raised, grew up in Gentilly. My family's roots are in the Treme neighborhood for hundreds of years now. I've served as a recorder of mortgages, actually during the storm, Hurricane Katrina, rebuilt the office, recovered the books. Also as judge at municipal court, where the majority of that time was as the chief judge. I was innovative and effective. I created diversion programs that directed people away from the criminal justice system and toward the services that they needed so that they would not continue to recidivate and return to court over and over again and avoid jail time as well. I am focused on improving this community, providing safety, health, and the welfare of all the citizens of this city of New Orleans. I am innovative, and I am prepared to address the issue of being innovative with stormwater management. We absolutely have to start dealing with stormwater differently in this community, and I am prepared to address that as your next mayor.
Judge Charbonnet, thank you very much. Thank you both. Now we begin with our first question, and it will be Councilwoman Cantrell. You will start off, and then once we get going, we will alternate who will answer first.
Fair.
Our first question, here we go. As the storms this summer have reminded us, including Hurricane Nate just a few weeks ago, New Orleans is a coastal city at risk from tropical storms. As our coastal wetlands disappear in New Orleans and its neighboring parishes, we become more vulnerable. What role, if any, will New Orleans take in regional water management and coastal restoration if you are elected?
Well, the bottom line is that we are truly all in this together. With the current information and facts that show us that, you know what, by 2030, we can even be non-existent. So we have to take an active approach, leveraging resources that we have, fully implementing our stormwater management plan in terms of using urban water, as well as ensuring that we build effectively, that we build on high, dry, safe ground. You know, shame on us if we don't move more of our people into areas of protection. We also have to work together, ensuring that the Coastal Restoration Fund that was created by a referendum of the people throughout the state of Louisiana, and New Orleans surely did show up in that regard, that those resources are used effectively and efficiently to enhance our barrier islands, to build in terms of our shelf, to work together with partnering with organizations like the Greater New Orleans Foundation, urban water management systems as well. We can do this, but we have to think regionally and we have to work together.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Judge Charbonnet.
Yes, regional approach is absolutely necessary. There are other parishes who are effectively, working with stormwater management. For example, Jefferson Parish now pumps to the river. New Orleans, we continue to pump to the lake. We need some other options, but we can learn from our neighbors as well, because we are all in this together. You know, we are not necessarily right on the Gulf, but we're still coastal, and so it still matters, because at some point, if we do not take this seriously, we will be on the Gulf. We will have beachfront property in this town. We don't want to see that happen. We need to keep these barrier islands strong, rebuild them as well. We have got to start thinking differently. There are so many experts in this community emerging with new ideas. We've got to make sure that we are teaching this in schools so that we can have people coming out of schools prepared to address these issues and building industry here. We should be leading, actually, on this whole topic.
Councilwoman, you have 45 seconds to say your piece.
Well, I think the city of New Orleans has truly taken steps in the right direction with the resiliency plan that we know we have, with the climate plan that we have, with the urban water management plan we have, and in addition to that, with billions of dollars that we have been able to secure. Now it's about getting things done, making sure that those resources are fully implementing the stormwater management plan. We know that the Gentilly initiative is moving forward, in addition to the one in terms of the Central City, Martin Luther King, bounded by Broad, as well as Claiborne. So we have to not only educate, but we have to walk the talk by fully implementing the plans that we have in place, and I am an implementer.
Judge Charbonnet.
Again, I didn't finish my thought on that, and I'm glad I have this opportunity. If we don't start training people in this industry, then we won't have anybody to do the work. We need to be the leaders on this. We live amongst water more than most places in the whole United States. We absolutely have to be able to lead. You know, we always go to the Netherlands. People talk about the Dutch and how well they manage water. We need to be we need to be the Dutch of the United States, and we should be leading. So I cannot stress enough how important it is to have us learn these industries, learn the ways of management with stormwater so that we can be at the forefront, rather, of this issue.
Let me ask both of you. First of all, Judge Charbonnet, what about the idea of a super region for coastal restoration, kind of like the economic regions that we have around the state? Would it be something you would be in favor of?
Absolutely. As I said earlier, you know, we are stronger together. You know, we cannot continue to think of ourselves as this little island of New Orleans. We are not that. We have got to work with our counterparts nearby because we're all affected by the erosion of the coast.
Councilwoman, your thoughts?
Absolutely. We have to be thinking regionally. We have to think along the lines of not only that we're all in this together, but we have a responsibility to protect the citizens of the state of Louisiana and, of course, the citizens of the city of New Orleans. Leveraging the dollars that have been allocated are imperative, as well as implementing the stormwater management plans that are already on the books, where resources have been allocated, but they need to be fully implemented.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Our second question now deals with the Sewerage and Water Board, and we go to you, Judge Charbonnet.
Yes, sir.
Poor management of the drainage system in our parish threatens our economy and our safety. As mayor, what will you do to create a more modern and effective sewerage and water board to meet the very real challenges we face living in the Crescent City, and how are you going to do it?
Well, we first of all have got to hire the very best there is out there to run Sewerage and Water Board. I will not budge on my mission to find a licensed professional engineer to run the Sewerage and Water Board. We can no longer afford to have someone who is incompetent running Sewerage and Water Board. It simply means too much to us. We've got to reorganize it completely. We also need to replace the positions, fill the positions, I should say, that are vacant. There's almost 300 positions that are not filled at Sewerage and Water Board. You wonder why it's not working effectively. We can't run pumps if we don't have people there to do that. Now, how are we going to change things, I think you said, something along those lines?
Yeah.
We're going to have to figure out how we're going to eventually get away from turbines. Not all of our pumps are powered by turbines. Some on the West Bank are not, some in New Orleans East are not. They are powered by Entergy. We need to eventually move on. The can has been kicked down the road too long. We've got to start switching from the turbines to a more efficient and modern way of powering the turbines.
Thank you, Judge. Councilwoman?
The Sewerage and Water Board has been broken for generations. And this is a real opportunity in our city to rebuild it from the bottom up, to ensure that it is sustainable for generations to come. Currently, we have an opening for a chief operating officer, chief financial officer, program manager, and the interim director is leaving this week. So we have a leadership and management problem right now. We also have over 350 positions that are vacant, and we have engineers that are making about $13 an hour. So we have to fix the existing conditions, of course, on that management side, and no question about getting competent skill sets in the leadership that is needed to fully manage the department or the agency. Also, on the governance side, we have to have people, again, with the skill sets needed to help hold the Sewerage and Water Board accountable. That has to happen. I have a plan of action. I've implemented plans, but we also have to ensure that we have people who are in the positions to get things done.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Judge Charbonnet.
Transparency is key. Accountability is key. My history in public service has been running public offices. As the recorder of mortgages, I managed an office of, at its height, 50 employees, all public employees. I know how to motivate employees. I know what it takes to get things done. I know that you have to make city employees feel that there is a sense of urgency about the job that they are doing. So we're going to have to make sure not only that we fill the positions, that we create a new culture in the manner in which we carry out our jobs on a daily basis. That's going to be key.
Thank you. And Ms. Cantrell.
Well, in addition to improving the overall management of the Sewerage and Water Board, we also have to be focused primarily, I would say, on creating an infrastructure fund, a holistic, and be thinking holistic and comprehensive about this, because we have to not only fix the infrastructure, but we have to maintain also what we fixed and build in better internal controls and a collaborative process where we're working not only with Sewerage and Water Board, but we're also talking about the Department of Public Works.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Cantrell, you talked about rebuilding the board. Would it take an effort to change anything at the state level to do that?
You know that in 2013, the structure of the Sewerage and Water Board was changed. In my opinion, and based on my experience, what I see is that we really need qualified, capable people in positions to get things done with the skill sets and core competencies as it relates to engineering, water management, construction, hydrology, and the like. But we have to ensure that we have the right people in those key positions.
Thank you very much. And really quickly, Judge Charbonnet, would you favor putting a member of the City Council back on the board?
I would. I'd consider that seriously. A council person is an advocate for their district. They are the people that receive all of the phone calls. I'm sure the council lady can tell you that. And so they are there. They are the voice of their community. There is a member of the public that's on the board, but I truly believe that the council, there should be at least one, because they are going to ask the questions, the hard questions that need to be asked in these meetings that represent the interests of their community and their public that they serve. So
Thank you, Judge, very
I think
much.
it's a good idea.
Councilwoman, this one is for you, and we talk jobs now. Water management is the fastest growing and highest paying job sector in the state, but Orleans Parish is not as engaged as others. What workforce training and placement strategies will you implement to create local jobs, promote equity, and connect people to opportunities in the large green infrastructure and water resilience arena?
Sure, we know that this is an industry that we definitely should be leading on in the city of New Orleans. We have the University of New Orleans, for example, has created a certification program. Really, we are a city with 8 colleges and universities and 2 medical schools. That's an industry of itself that we should be playing to, bringing back and enfolding in Tulane with the engineering program, but right-sizing the departments so that we are educating our people for these jobs. Workforce development training has to be a priority. We know that we have people ready to work, but we need to ensure that they have, again, the skill sets capable. Incentivizing, I believe, these positions will be key as well, and that's something that we really can do within the city of New Orleans. But it really goes back to the workforce development, leaning very heavily on the 8 colleges and universities that we have in our city, ensuring that there are certification programs really at all of them, and meeting our people, where they are, training them for these 21st century jobs in the heart of our city. This is an industry that we need to play to, and it means connecting our people to the opportunity and the training necessary.
Judge Charbonnet.
All right, so of course, we do need to have people learning the stormwater management, the whole industry, and the particular diversion details that go with it. But we need to start having people and young people think about it very early in their lives so that it becomes a way of living. We have to start early. We have to have these kids learning about it in school at a very young age. People like Calvin Mackey, if you've ever met him, he does excellent work with STEM NOLA. He stimulates young minds, and that's, I think, really where we need to start with it so that they're already interested in this as they grow older. But certainly, these universities need to be offering the right courses that will allow you to go into the industry right away. I also think in high school we should be offering that. The emerging jobs in this particular sector, they are estimating that about 7,000 jobs will come from this sector over the next decade. We need to have a workforce that's ready to do that. So we've got to start getting young people interested very early, and then we can build that sector here, and we can lead on that issue.
Councilwoman, 45 seconds.
Sure, and also focusing on renewable energy practices as well, because all of this truly is tied together. Playing to our strengths within the city of New Orleans, not overlooking, again, the assets that we have within our higher ed community is a priority, but incentivizing our young people to be connected to workforce development and training will be essential. We have to prepare our young people for these jobs. There's no reason we have 350 vacancies within the Sewerage and Water Board that we are not connecting people to. As I said earlier, pay definitely has to be looked at because we have engineers, again, making $13 an hour. But again, if we're meeting people where they are, giving them the appropriate training necessary, tying them to universities in their backyard, then we can advance on this issue. We can not only fill these jobs, but we can build a sustainable environment for generations to come.
Thank you, ma'am. Judge?
I talked about the jobs that we expect this industry to create. There's another aspect to that. The great thing about these jobs is that the majority of the jobs that are going to be in demand are the mid-level jobs. 52% of the jobs in this industry are going to be mid-level, which means you merely need a high school degree and then a diploma, and then maybe a little advanced training on top of that. So the opportunity is there, and we need to fill those jobs. Again, you don't need a college degree to take advantage of most of these jobs. They're there for young people right when they come out of high school.
Judge Charbonnet, you mentioned about getting the universities involved, and of course the high schools, as you mentioned. How do you do that? How do you encourage the universities to teach the right things? That's probably not the right word,
Well,
but you know what I mean.
you get with the heads of the departments, you get with the presidents of the universities, and you make sure they understand that as I want to grow this community, the business in the community, this particular industry, and this economy, you've got to be producing graduates who are experts in the field. They've got to understand that, and they've got to work with you. And I think they want to, because one of the biggest complaints I hear is that none of our kids are staying here anymore. I have nieces, I don't have children, but I have nieces and nephews that are all over this country because they can't stay here for a job. So if we want to keep people here, we're going to have to encourage them to do that. And I don't see why they wouldn't. I think they're already, heading that way. But making sure they understand that those are businesses that can grow our economy. If I go out and get them, I am going to have people who are ready to work in that industry, in those sectors.
Thank you very much.
I think they cooperate.
Let's move to our next question, and this will be for Judge Charbonnet once again. New Orleans will soon celebrate its 300th anniversary. In those years, development has given us both a vibrant city and one with immense challenges, including dealing with stormwater. As mayor, how would you introduce a stormwater management program that gives everyone a role to play, residents, businesses, and organizations alike? Do you envision an approach that is more carrot or more stick?
I'm going to go for the carrot option. I'm taking the carrot. Listen, we have to get everybody involved, right? Because it rains here all the time. Again, I said earlier, we're pumping to the lake. We're not gonna survive only doing that anymore. We're gonna have to encourage residents to use permeable overlaid concrete. It's not concrete, but I think you get the point, right? And so that it slowly soaks up the water. We need to also encourage residents to collect stormwater, but I can't just ask you to collect stormwater. I have to encourage you to collect stormwater. So my concept is to make sure that we give every resident one of the barrels that they can, to make it easy. So I'm gonna give it to you to help you, to get you started, so that you can collect the stormwater. The beauty of that is that you can then reuse that water when you water your garden or you wash your car. So we've gotta kind of give you a little nudge, but I believe that once the citizens see the benefit, they'll wanna participate.
Thank you, Judge. Councilwoman?
Incentives. Thank you. Incentives are key to getting and creating that carrot that not only looks good, but it tastes good as well. And it will encourage everyone to put some skin in the game. Both not only residents, of course, our businesses as well. But with the incentives, then that could move these initiatives forward. Working with Urban Conservancy, for example, in terms of educating our residents not to, to pave over their driveways, which in fact, with better enforcement from city government on that executive side, we can ensure that people are adhering and being compliant to the laws that are on the books. But of course, encouraging bioswales, encouraging, of course, barrels within around your home, encouraging and working with neighbors not to even pave their backyards. As a result of my neighbor paving her backyard, I'm now collecting water. So working with our residents through incentives to help them live with water.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Judge Charbonnet.
Yeah. It's interesting that I was just noticing as I was riding around earlier today, kind of thinking and preparing for this forum, how much we have concrete like everywhere around us. It's everywhere. And I think when we were growing this nation and of course this city, it seemed like the right thing to do because it lasts a long time. Again, I go back to using more permeable products. It is the way to go now. Things do have to change. And, not only here, but all across this nation. We're going to have to change. But, if you take a moment, you look around, it's concrete everywhere. And concrete simply does not absorb water.
Thank you. Councilwoman.
There are many examples of improving the use and capturing stormwater. definitely discouraging parking lots that become just a runoff for rainwater into our streets, into our drains. So much like we did with the Keller Library and Community Center, creating that bioswale. How did we, redesign the roof so that the water, when it hits, it actually flows, into the bioswale that captures over 60,000 gallons of water, keeping it, again, from running into the drains. Creating cisterns that are not just in public spaces, but even in private spaces, again, capturing that water. I would love for us to get to the point where we're using brown water for flushing toilets and the like, but that will take change at the state level. But there are things that we can do.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you. Our next question, this is a little bit long, and it goes to you, Councilwoman Cantrell. New Orleans is a sinking city, and much of its subsidence has been accelerated by unchecked use by commercial and industrial water users who draw large amounts of groundwater. Subsidence drives flood risk, broken water lines, and crumbling streets that cost our citizens in dollars and quality of life. This is not about stormwater. In fact, subsidence can be worse in a drought. So far, the city does nothing about this, and even though the urban water plan and the city master plan certainly call for action on it, as mayor, what will you do to begin to manage groundwater in New Orleans?
Well, managing groundwater, again, it does have an impact in regards to the urban water plan that we do have. And so fully implementing that plan will be essential. There is several $1 billion that we have been able to capture and that we can fully implement these stormwater management initiatives that are tied to the urban water management plan. Encouraging, again, development that is being very intentional about how they build. Green infrastructure is very important. Being, high, dry, safe ground, it really all matters. But again, I think that we have to fully implement a plan, the urban plan that we have. That's going to ensure sustainability. There is not a one-size-fits-all approach. We do have within the comprehensive zoning ordinance requirements that are necessary, but I have led on that issue, creating a stormwater management task force so that we can ensure that policies that are on the books can truly be implemented and not kill development, but further expand upon it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Judge Charbonnet.
I'm sorry, it was a long question.
Yes. We are dealing with the subsidence of our city and dealing with the fact that commercial and industrial water users often draw a lot of water from the ground. And the question is, how will you begin to manage groundwater in New Orleans?
Okay. All right. So there is no point in having a master plan that's supposed to have the effect of law if we don't follow it. So I believe there has been a lack of will in the administration to actually implement it. You have to have the will to do that. So we've got to follow the rules we set for ourselves. As a judge at municipal court, I can't tell you the amount of laws that are on the books that I never saw enforced. Many. Even a curfew law. I know this has nothing to do with stormwater management, but just for example, I've never seen that. And the municipal court has jurisdiction over that type of a matter. So the point is, if we don't implement it, if we don't have the will, then we're just wasting our time. Why are we bothering having all these committees come together to put together these plans and we don't enforce them? So I think that's huge. And listen, for those that are, the companies that are using them, maybe we need to monitor their usage and try to implement some kind of a fee of some kind for their usage.
Thank you, Judge. Councilwoman?
Well, in regards to ensuring that the stormwater management practices that are embedded in the CZO are followed, we do have to restructure what's there. Because right now, the perception is that one size fits all, and that is not appropriate. We have to encourage development, but at the same time, ensure that practices can be flexible enough to mitigate flooding, as well as just moving this pretty much being more detrimental to our environment. So we have to do both. We have to create that carrot to incentivize better development, as well as streamline the policies so that there is not a one-size-fits-all approach. And that's really what led to the creation of a stormwater management task force, so that we can restructure and get it right. But what's been happening, the developers are seeing an added burden because we did not get it right as it relates to the CZO with this issue right now.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Judge Charbonnet,
Yeah,
45 seconds.
I go back to that. We've got the CZO, we've got the master plan. Let's implement it, let's follow it, let's enforce it, and let's get it done.
Thank you, Judge Charbonnet. And Judge, this will be for you as well to start off. Historically, our city hasn't acted aggressively to mitigate the effects of climate change, even though we are arguably the most vulnerable city in the country. The Landrieu administration acknowledged this by introducing a climate action plan. As mayor, what will your approach be, and what are the first 2 or 3 things you might do under that plan?
Well, one of the things I already said was that I really want to encourage individuals, homeowners, to collect stormwater. I would also like to take advantage of the amount of water that we have by collecting it in a different way. I was reading an article in the New York Times about a city in Canada that collects their stormwater, and it's right along the riverfront, and it's a beautiful structure. It's a huge metal object, and it has lights in it, and it's actually an attraction for people now. And so they collect the water, it flows down this object, and they collect it for later use. So thinking about ways that we could use it and it actually be a part of our landscape even. So those are 2 ideas I have right there. Again, collecting water differently. We talk about, in Jefferson Parish, how we learn from other parishes. They allow some of their stormwater to collect in their park. That's another way that to be done as well. So I try to implement that. But listen, you've got to have experts in this field. Again, that's why we want our universities to produce the right students to eventually help us become a part of the administration.
Thank you, Judge. Councilwoman.
I think the Climate Action Plan gives great promise to the future of this city. I think that we have been a city leading on eliminating greenhouse gas as well as emissions within the environment, but we definitely have a long way to go. So implementing that Climate Action Plan will be key. But in terms of starting, I would start with City Hall. In the winter, it's freezing cold. And in the summer, it's hot in your offices throughout city government. We waste more energy than you can imagine within the building that we operate government in. That has to change. In regards to recycling, we have bins almost in every office in city government. But you know where it goes? In the trash. So that's something that we have to be leading on in city government. And I believe that, those are some of the ways that I would start pushing and changing the habits within city government.
Thank you very much. A rebuttal, Judge Charbonnet.
Again, we've got to learn how to live with this water. If you've ever heard David Wagoner talk about how, we have to realize that water is going to be around us and that we're not going to be able to pump it out. So I go back to saying that the innovative new young minds that are coming out with ideas on how we can deal with this. And it may actually cause us to have more water in the city that is being contained, but not always pumped out. And it can always be, we have to start thinking about how it can be attractive and pretty and something that we like to see. So my idea is to, again, collect it, but in a way that's pleasing to everyone.
Thanks, Judge. 45 seconds, Ms. Cantrell.
I would also ensure that we incentivize educational opportunities for both the young and old within our city. That's a great way to start to change behaviors so that we're minimizing, for example, the water use, minimizing how we use energy within our homes, within our own environment. Also work more closely, I would say, as mayor with the New Orleans City Council that has regulatory powers. And so we can definitely, I think, advance the Climate Action Plan if we lead, again, by example. But setting the tone that we're incentivizing educational practices to change behavior will be essential.
Thank you, Councilwoman. This is our final moderator-asked question, and here's the bedrock question, and it goes to you, Councilwoman Cantrell. It's the bedrock question for the future leader of a city without any bedrock. As we have learned from many years of experience, it can be complicated for different city departments and agencies to work together toward a common vision. Often the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, or if it does, it doesn't seem to care. This is especially evident when it comes to drainage issues. As mayor, how will you change the culture and ensure that all departments work together effectively?
Well, one is changing the culture of no to that of yes. Being more customer friendly, that we are doing our jobs to improve the quality of life of the people that we serve. Elected or not, it truly does matter. I have a demonstrated track record as a leader of listening, building consensus, and getting things done. And that's going to be the culture that we set within city government, ensuring that all departments are talking, of course, communicating. We have systems in place in terms of data systems like the Llama, for example, but not all departments are on Llama. And if we just make those improvements in terms of how we use data, how we share data, then we will truly be advancing city government in a way, again, that gets and shows results to the citizens that we are elected and that we are working to serve.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Judge Charbonnet.
I'm going to lead by example. As your mayor, I'm going to show the employees at City Hall that I'm going to work hard and I'm going to work with others, that I am going to build an excellent relationship with the City Council. Right now, we have a problem with Sewerage and Water Board, and what we saw on August 5th was an abject failure of a very routine process. Department of Public Works and Sewerage and Water Board do not work together. We have one department, DPW, that deals with pipes up to 36 inches, and then you have Sewerage and Water Board that deals with pipes 36 inches and above, and they don't even talk to each other. They have historically not been on the same page. I am going to demand from whomever is the head of DPW and Sewerage and Water Board that within 90 days after this election, after taking over, I should say, that they give me a plan as to how they are going to coordinate efforts, how they're going to work together. If they cannot, then they will have to go. One thing I know how to do is run public offices. So I'm prepared to take that on, and they will work together for your benefit.
Councilwoman Cantrell, 45 seconds.
Ensuring that there is better interagency coordination is definitely key. We have to, get rid of this whole plan or of action to where, a street is repaved and then there you go, it's dug up again. It's wasteful. It is something that is inefficient, and I have no doubt in my mind that just streamlining the efficiencies within government, building in internal controls, that we will be able to not only save money, but we will be able to get more done, maintaining the infrastructure and improvements throughout our city. We have to do it. It needs to be a priority, whether it is the resurfacing of streets, but then the life, about 2 years, here comes the pothole again.
Thank you,
so we have to be very intentional about that.
Judge Charbonnet, 45 seconds.
As I said before, I know how to run public offices, and I also know how to reduce waste. We're going to have to look and see which of these departments could be merged. The mayor has done that in certain instances, and I think it has been effective. There's another way that you do that so that you don't have two different departments that are trying to get along. I just think it's something we should look at to be effective and efficient. But again, I want to make sure that the employees at City Hall really realize why it's so important that they do a good job and why these departments need to work together. One thing that I'm going to do once I take over is we're all going to have a new swearing in of sorts. And make sure that everybody understands that when you are going to start working under my administration, we're going to take this seriously. We're going to commit ourselves. It's going to be a refreshing approach toward the job, and then we're going to go from there, and we're going to continue to get together and improve services.
Thank you very much. Now we're moving to our audience questions. We have a very limited amount of time. We've run a little bit longer than we expected, so we're going to get in as many as we possibly can. You will have 1 minute to answer, okay, ladies?
Okay.
Here we go. Our first question from Robert. Proposed changes such as those in the urban water plan may make dramatic changes to the physical face of the city. How will you address environmental justice concerns? And it's Judge Charbonnet to start.
Well, you have got to make sure that these changes don't just affect poor neighborhoods and those with the less, the minor voices in town. So it's hugely important. You know, when we talk about changes, we do have to accept change. That is just part of growth. However, you know, I hearken back to the days of my parents' time when they had to put that interstate over Claiborne Avenue and how that was such a thriving neighborhood and how it changed that neighborhood forever. There were oak trees. That was some green, beautiful green space and that in the neutral ground, and it just changed it forever. And so, and there's always been that feeling that it was done in that neighborhood because it was primarily an African-American neighborhood. We cannot make those kind of mistakes again. We've got to change, but we also have to consider the lives of the people in these neighborhoods who are going to be affected.
Councilwoman Cantrell.
Well, ensuring environmental justice has to be a priority within the city. And even as we talk about advancing the building on high, dry, safe ground, that is something that has not been well received, even in this post-Katrina environment. Oftentimes I get, you know, complaints about, blocking my view to the point that me and my staff, we say, I have a view speech. And so we really have to encourage people to you know, adapt to change, but it's all about protecting the environment, but protecting the lives of all of our people. Through the history of our city, we know that there has been definitely a disservice to predominantly minority communities. We know that. But in terms of mitigating those environmental hazards, again, it needs to be a priority, and it will be one under my administration. But putting in also incentives so that future development can occur, again, with not damaging the environment.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Let's move on to our next question. How would you get the oil and gas industry to pay for their share of the damage they have done to the wetlands so important to storm surge protection? And this is from Bob, and we start off with you, Councilwoman.
Yeah, well, many of our other parishes, as you know, have already filed lawsuits as it relates to the damages that have occurred to the coastline. I mean, it's evident, it's fact. In addition to that, it has even been proven, of course, the damage that it's caused to the city of New Orleans. I know that there has been a lot of discouragement, I would say, on behalf of the oil and gas industry with the city of New Orleans filing a lawsuit. So I would be working not only with oil and gas, but really working with the leaders throughout the city of New Orleans, the New Orleans City Council, our local delegation, so that we truly can get the adequate resources that our people deserve, that our city deserves, so that we can protect our coastline, so that we can build up our barriers, so that we can ensure real, long-lasting sustainability for generations to come. So the lawsuit is something that is definitely on the table.
Judge Charbonnet.
Yes, so the lawyer in me says sue. You know? I mean, you got to sue them. They're making millions, billions of dollars off of our Gulf, and they have to pay us back for the damage. Now, there have been lawsuits that have recovered monies that have gone toward recovering, rebuilding our coastline. It's hugely important. I'd also work with the federal delegation. I do have the support of Congressman Richmond. I would, you know, use that to your advantage so that I could get the funds from the government, the federal government, to get, you know, to restore our coastline. Because the coastline is important to the entire nation. It's in everybody's best interest that we have a strong coastline. You know, the barrier islands, the salt water and the fresh water that mix, that creates a whole nother ecosystem. We've got fish that are developed through that. We have birds that nest there. There's just so much that goes into having a strong coastline and a clean coastline. It breaks my heart every time I see those Dawn dishwashing liquid commercials where they're scrubbing a little duck clean from some oil. It's just the saddest thing. And so we've got to be able to let them know that they're paying penalties so that they don't make those mistakes.
And this is going to be our last audience question, and then we'll have our closing statements, and it will be for Judge Charbonnet. It starts off, there is a proposal for building a new natural gas power plant in Michaud. Given concerns about subsidence, carbon emissions, and the need to power Sewage and Water Board, do you believe moving forward with the plant at this time would be wise? And it's from Daniel. Judge.
I would not move forward with that plant until I had a really good conversation with the residents of New Orleans East. You know, we've got to, thank you, we have to allow the community to have input. I think that's one of the things that's happened lately with the administration, where they feel like it's just things have been decided for them. Now, you know, when you say to power Sewage and Water Board, that certainly causes us concern, because we know how important it is that we have power going to these pumps. It's extremely important to us and our economy. I can't get businesses to come here if they think they're going to have to shut their doors every time there's a heavy storm. So, you know, we've got to kind of weigh the risk versus the benefit. But I would not do it at all and go forward with it without hearing the voices and concerns of those residents who are going to have to live around it and nearby it.
Thank you, Judge. Councilwoman.
You know, knowing the opportunities we truly do have for renewable energy practices, this really does seem like low-hanging fruit for us to, one, not to rush in and jump in to building a $200 million plant that's only going to provide up to 13 jobs. I think that the reliability, you know, really is an issue. My lights were off on Sunday morning. We had a little rain. The lights were off. I had to curl my hair in the car, you know, and so, you know, it's something that really is not going to address the existing conditions that residents are faced with right now in regards to knowing that utilities are on and they do not come on and off at times that you do not expect them to. And so it really does seem like an opportunity to leverage many of the assets that we know we have, skill sets that we have around energy practices, around renewable energy, creating jobs that are long-lasting jobs and good-paying jobs should be the approach.
Thank you very much. And we want to thank our audience for sending in those great questions. We had a lot more great questions, but we're just frankly out of time. And now we have time for our closing statements. And our closing statements, the order was also chosen by coin flip, and it will be Councilwoman Cantrell to finish up with her closing statements. 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds.
Okay. Well, thank you all again for your interest and, of course, your participation in this forum tonight. It shows that I believe that we're going in the right direction in our city to fully implement stormwater management practices, fully implementing the urban water management plan, and again, the climate action plan and the plan of resiliency. I have a demonstrated track record of listening, building consensus, and delivering results in our city, both as a city councilwoman and, of course, as an executive leader at the grassroots level. I have been in the trenches of every single issue faced within our city right now, whether it's affordable housing, criminal justice reform, economic development, public health, you name it. I have led on these issues, and I've been able to get things done. And I want to serve this city as your next mayor. Our people need hope, protection, and real opportunity. They need access to good-paying jobs so that they can ensure that their lives in the city will be filled in an environment that is of quality. It is time. We're about to be 300 years old, and it is unacceptable that we are still a tale of two cities. Not everyone in our community has felt connected to growth and opportunity, but as your next mayor, we will ensure that all of our people can reach their full potential in our city.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Judge Charbonnet, your closing statements.
Thank you. I can't stress enough how thankful I am to have this opportunity to exchange ideas with you this evening, and how exciting it really is to be one of two women that will be the first woman mayor of our city as we approach our 300th year. It is certainly an honor, and I thank you all for that. I just want to remind you that I have served you for 20 years now with honesty and integrity. It has been my extreme pleasure, and I'm humbled by the support I have received as a mayoral candidate. You have to understand that I am prepared for this job. I have lived here and I was born and raised here, and I am committed to this community. I had just been reelected to an 8-year term unopposed as a judge at municipal court, and I could have certainly taken the smoother path. But my commitment to this community is so strong that I decided to step down to run for this position. I am prepared to serve you. I understand how to run city offices and government. I know the work that needs to be done. I have a plan. I have a comprehensive crime plan. I have a housing plan and an economic development plan all online for you to see. But I want to close with sharing my vision of this city with you. I see a city that's a clean, beautiful, safe city. A city where mothers will walk down the street with strollers in the evening without fear. A city where people in certain neighborhoods don't have to ride around the block 2 times for fear for their safety at night. A city where at night the lights are on, when it rains the pumps are working, and then the streets are smooth as you should expect them. So I ask you to join me in that vision, and thank you all. Good night.
Thank you, Judge Charbonnet. And with that, I say thank you to both of our candidates, Judge Desiree Charbonnet and Councilwoman LaToya Cantrell.
Thank y'all.
I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all of our partners in tonight's endeavor. We also want to thank the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts for all their hospitality this evening.
Yes, thank you.
And on behalf of the Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana and the Urban Conservancy and also the Greater New Orleans Foundation, thank you all for being here. And don't forget to vote on November 18th. Have a great night, everybody.